Most people believe influence begins with speaking, with having the right argument, the right sentence, the perfect comeback. They think influence belongs to the loudest voice in the room. But if you study the most respected leaders, negotiators, thinkers, and communicators in the world, you begin to notice something strange. They don't talk the most, they talk the least. And when they finally speak, everyone listens. Think about that for a moment. In a world overflowing with noise, podcasts, meetings, social media, endless opinions, the rarest thing is not intelligence. The rarest thing is intentional speech. And intentional speech has power, because words only gain weight when they are rare. This audiobook is about mastering that rare power. In this audiobook, Speak Less, Influence More, you will discover a counterintuitive truth about communication. The secret to influence is not speaking more. The secret is speaking better. And speaking better begins with something most people are terrible at: listening, observing, pausing, choosing. Because every conversation in your life, every friendship, every relationship, every business partnership is built from thousands of tiny communication moments. Small exchanges, small reactions, small decisions about what to say and what not to say. Improve those moments just slightly, and your entire life begins to transform. Your relationships deepen. Your presence becomes stronger. Your words carry weight. And suddenly, people start noticing something different about you. They listen when you speak. They ask for your perspective. They trust your judgment. Not because you demanded influence, but because you earned it. There is a quote often attributed to ancient strategists: "Those who know do not speak much. Those who speak much often do not know." Now, whether or not those exact words are ancient wisdom doesn't matter, because the principle is timeless. Noise weakens authority. Restraint builds it, and the modern world has forgotten this. Today, people interrupt constantly. They rush to prove themselves. They fill silence with unnecessary words. They talk to impress rather than speak to connect. But influence is not created through performance. Influence is created through understanding. Understanding what someone feels, understanding what someone fears, understanding what someone truly needs. And you cannot understand those things while you are talking. You can only understand them while you are listening. Communication researchers often describe conversation as a coordination process, a dance between two minds trying to understand each other. But most people treat it like a competition. Who can speak faster? Who can sound smarter? Who can win the argument? And when communication becomes competition, connection disappears. Influence disappears. Respect disappears. But something remarkable happens when a person learns to slow down, to listen deeply, to pause before speaking, to choose their words with precision. They become rare, and rarity attracts attention. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine a meeting with 10 people. Everyone is talking, ideas flying, opinions colliding, voices rising. Then suddenly, one person speaks. Not loudly, not aggressively, just calmly. And because they waited, because they observed, because they spoke last instead of first, their words land with clarity. The room quiets. People listen. That is the power of restraint, and restraint can be learned. Over the next chapters, we will explore the psychology of powerful communication. You will learn how silence creates authority, why listening builds trust faster than speaking, how asking better questions makes people open up, how emotional control gives your words gravity, why fewer words create stronger influence, and most importantly, how mastering these skills can transform the way people see you. But before we go further, we must address something important. Speaking less does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean becoming shy. And it certainly does not mean hiding your voice. True influence requires courage. You must still speak when it matters, still share ideas, still guide conversations, but instead of speaking impulsively, you speak intentionally. Instead of reacting, you respond. Instead of filling space with noise, you fill it with meaning. And meaning is what people remember, because most people forget conversations, but they never forget how someone made them feel. The calm person in chaos, the thoughtful voice in a heated debate, the one who listened when everyone else only wanted to speak. Those are the people who shape decisions. Those are the people who guide groups. Those are the people who quietly influence the direction of entire rooms. And once you understand this, you begin to see communication differently. You stop thinking about what you want to say and start thinking about what the conversation needs. Sometimes the conversation needs questions. Sometimes it needs empathy. Sometimes it needs silence. And sometimes it needs a single sentence that changes everything. This audiobook will teach you how to recognize those moments, how to read people, how to respond wisely, how to speak less, but influence everyone, because influence is not volume. Influence is precision, and precision begins with awareness. Which brings us to the first principle of powerful communication. Before you learn to speak less, you must learn to notice more, because the most influential communicators in the world are not talkers. They are observers. And once you begin seeing what most people miss, your words will start carrying power you never imagined. That is where our journey truly begins. Dear viewer, please write in the comments how you like the video. Do you like it, or is there anything you would improve? Please let us know so that we can make good, high-quality videos for you. Thank you very much. Chapter 2, Stop Talking, Start Seeing. Before someone becomes a powerful communicator, they become something else first. An observer? Most people walk into a conversation already preparing their next sentence. They are rehearsing responses in their mind, planning stories, preparing opinions, thinking about how they will sound. But in doing so, they miss the most valuable information available, the person in front of them. Human communication is not only about words, it is about tone, energy, body language, silence, pauses, expressions, signals that appear for a fraction of a second and disappear again. These signals reveal far more than spoken language ever could. But you can only see them when you stop talking long enough to notice them. Imagine walking into a room. Before anyone says a word, the room already tells a story. Someone sits confidently at the center of the table. Another leans back with crossed arms. Someone else avoids eye contact. Two people exchange subtle glances, tiny signals, micro behaviors, but each one reveals something important. Who feels confident? Who feels uncomfortable? Who wants control? Who feels uncertain? Most people miss all of this because they are too busy thinking about themselves. What will I say? How will I sound? Do they like me? Do I look smart? This mental noise blocks awareness, and awareness is the foundation of influence, because you cannot influence what you do not understand. Think about the best communicators you've ever met. They don't rush into conversations. They pause, they watch, they absorb information first. It almost feels like they are studying the moment before acting, and in a sense they are. Great communicators behave like detectives. They gather clues, tone of voice, speed of speech, facial expressions, confidence levels, emotional states. All of these clues tell them how to respond. When you learn to observe like this, something powerful happens. Your communication stops being reactive and starts becoming strategic. Instead of guessing what someone needs, you see it. Instead of forcing your opinion, you guide the conversation. Instead of fighting resistance, you dissolve it. Observation gives you an invisible advantage, but observation requires patience, and patience requires restraint, because the urge to speak is strong. When silence appears in conversation, many people panic. They rush to fill the space. They add unnecessary words. They change topics. They talk simply to escape the discomfort of quiet. But silence is not a problem. Silence is information. Silence tells you someone is thinking. Silence tells you someone is processing emotions. Silence tells you a topic may be sensitive. Silence tells you the moment is important. The most influential communicators do not fear silence. They use it. Silence creates space, and space reveals truth. When you remain quiet for just a few seconds longer than most people would, something interesting happens. The other person continues speaking. They add more details. They reveal deeper thoughts. Often, they reveal the real issue hiding beneath the surface, all because you gave them space. This is one of the most powerful communication tools you will ever learn. It requires no special training, no complex strategy, only patience. But patience is rare, and rare skills create influence. Here is a simple exercise you can practice today. During your next conversation, say less than you normally would. Instead of interrupting, listen. Instead of responding immediately, pause. Instead of filling silence, observe. Watch how the other person behaves. Watch their expressions. Watch their energy. You will start noticing things you never saw before. Who dominates conversations? Who seeks approval? Who becomes nervous when challenged? Who relaxes when heard? These observations give you an extraordinary advantage, because once you understand someone, influencing them becomes much easier. But observation alone is not enough. Influence requires something deeper. It requires emotional awareness. Because beneath every conversation lies emotion, frustration, excitement, fear, pride, insecurity. These emotions shape how people react. Yet most people ignore them. They respond only to the words spoken. But powerful communicators respond to the feelings behind the words. Someone might say, "That idea won't work." But the emotion behind the statement might be fear. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of change. If you respond only to the words, you argue. But if you respond to the emotion, you guide, you reassure, you redirect. And suddenly the conversation transforms. Observation reveals these hidden layers, which means observation gives you the power to guide conversations more effectively. But there is another benefit. When people feel truly seen, they trust you. Trust is built not through speaking, but through understanding. Think about the last time someone listened to you deeply, not interrupting, not rushing to give advice, just listening. How did it feel? You probably felt respected. You probably felt valued. And that emotional experience created connection. Connection creates influence. This is why the quiet listener often becomes the most respected voice in the room. Because people trust those who understand them. But observation leads to an even more powerful skill. Once you learn to observe, you begin learning when to speak. Timing is everything in communication. Say the right words at the wrong moment, and they fail. Say the right words at the right moment, and they transform the conversation. Observation helps you recognize that moment, the exact point where your words will matter most. And when that moment arrives, you don't need many words. A single sentence can shift everything. Because the power of words does not come from quantity. It comes from timing and clarity. But before we learn how to choose powerful words, we must first learn another critical skill, a skill that separates reactive communicators from influential ones. The ability to pause before speaking. That pause, often just 2 or 3 seconds, can change the outcome of an entire conversation. And mastering that pause may be the single most important communication skill you will ever develop. Chapter 3. Master the pause before you speak. There is a tiny moment that exists in every conversation. Most people never notice it. It happens between what someone says and how you respond. A space no longer than 2 or 3 seconds, a brief silence, a pause. And inside that pause lies extraordinary power. Because most people skip it. Someone says something surprising. Someone criticizes you. Someone challenges your idea. And instantly your brain reacts. Defend yourself. Explain. Interrupt. Prove your point. Speak. React. But reaction is not influence. Reaction is instinct. Influence is choice. And the pause is where that choice happens. The pause gives your mind time to catch up with your emotions. It gives your brain time to think clearly. It gives you control over your words. Without the pause, you are controlled by the moment. With the pause, you control the moment. Think about the most respected communicators you have ever encountered. They rarely rush their responses. When someone asks them a question, they pause. When tension rises in a room, they pause. When disagreement appears, they pause. At first, this silence can feel unusual, but something fascinating happens during those seconds. People lean in. They wait. Your words gain importance before you even speak. Why? Because calmness signals confidence. In a world where everyone rushes to react, the person who pauses appears thoughtful, deliberate, composed, and composure creates authority. Imagine 2 people in a heated meeting. One reacts instantly. Their voice rises. Their words come quickly. They interrupt. They defend. The room feels tense. The second person pauses just 3 seconds. They breathe. They consider the situation. Then they respond slowly, calmly. Suddenly, the energy of the room changes. People feel the difference. One person reacted, the other person led. That leadership begins with the pause. But the pause does more than create authority. It improves the quality of your thinking. Your first reaction is rarely your best response. Your first reaction is emotional, defensive, impulsive. But if you pause for a moment, something interesting happens. Your brain produces better ideas, better words, better strategies. Instead of responding emotionally, you respond intelligently. This is why experienced negotiators rely heavily on silence. They understand that silence changes dynamics. When someone makes an offer and the negotiator stays quiet, the other person often continues speaking. They justify. They explain. Sometimes they even improve their own offer without being asked. All because silence made them uncomfortable. Silence has psychological gravity. It pulls people deeper into conversation, and that gravity can work in your favor. But mastering the pause takes practice. because silence can feel uncomfortable, especially in modern culture. We live in a world that rewards speed, fast answers, instant reactions, quick responses. But speed rarely produces wisdom. Slowing down produces clarity. Clarity produces influence. So how do you train yourself to pause? Here's a simple technique. Whenever someone finishes speaking, silently count to 3 before responding. 1, 2, 3. It may feel long at first, but those 3 seconds will transform your communication. During that pause, ask yourself 3 questions. What did they actually say? What might they be feeling? What response will move this conversation forward? These questions shift your focus away from reaction and toward understanding. And understanding always leads to better communication. Another way to strengthen the pause is through breathing. Your breath controls your emotional state. When tension rises, breathing becomes shallow, fast, chaotic. But when you take one slow breath before speaking, your nervous system calms down. Your mind becomes clearer, your tone becomes steadier. This small habit can prevent countless communication mistakes. Now there is another powerful benefit to pausing. It increases the weight of your words. Imagine someone who talks continuously, sentence after sentence, thought after thought. Eventually, people stop listening. The words blend together, nothing stands out. But imagine someone who speaks slowly, who pauses between ideas, who allows silence to exist between sentences. Suddenly, every word feels intentional. Every sentence feels important. Silence gives words their gravity. Without silence, words lose their power. This is why many of the most powerful speeches in history include long pauses. Those pauses allow the audience to absorb meaning, emotion, impact, and this same principle applies to everyday conversations. Your pauses make people listen, but the pause also protects you from one of the greatest communication mistakes: speaking when emotions are high, anger, frustration, embarrassment. These emotions push people to say things they later regret. But the pause interrupts that impulse. It gives you time to choose a better path, a wiser response. Sometimes that response is a calm explanation. Sometimes it is a thoughtful question. And sometimes the best response is saying nothing at all. Silence can communicate confidence. Silence can communicate disagreement. Silence can communicate patience. And sometimes silence reveals more than words ever could. The pause is the gateway to all of this. It transforms conversations. It transforms arguments. It transforms how people perceive you. Because when you master the pause, you stop reacting like everyone else. You begin responding like a leader. But the pause leads us to another critical communication skill. Once you learn when to speak, you must learn how to speak with precision. Because influence does not come from speaking often. It comes from choosing words that matter. And in the next chapter, we will explore how to choose words that carry real impact. Because when you combine silence, timing, and precise language, your voice begins to carry a kind of authority that cannot be ignored. Dear friend, we are just starting to work on this channel, so your likes and subscriptions will greatly help us grow. Don't be indifferent. Thank you. Chapter 4. Speak with precision. Most people believe influence comes from more words, long explanations, complex arguments, endless talking. But the opposite is true. Influence grows when words become precise. Because every unnecessary word weakens the message. Imagine someone explaining an idea like this. Well, what I was trying to say earlier is that maybe in some situations, we could potentially consider looking at another option, although I'm not completely sure yet. By the time they finish the sentence, the energy of the room has already disappeared. The message is buried under hesitation and noise. Now imagine the same idea expressed differently. We should consider another option. 7 words. Clear, direct, confident. Which version carries more authority? The second, not because the speaker was louder, but because the speaker was clear. Clarity is influence. Confusion destroys it. This is why the most powerful communicators spend more time choosing their words than speaking them. They understand something most people forget. Every word you speak either strengthens your message or weakens it. And most people weaken their message without realizing it. They add filler words. They apologize for their ideas. They dilute strong statements with uncertainty. Phrases like, "I might be wrong, but just my opinion." This might sound silly. Before the idea is even expressed, the speaker has already reduced its impact. Your words should not fight against your own message. They should support it. This does not mean you must sound aggressive. Confidence and aggression are not the same. Confidence is calm. Confidence is clear. Confidence speaks simply. And simplicity is the foundation of powerful communication. Think about great teachers, great storytellers, great leaders. They rarely use complicated language. They use simple words with strong meaning. Because the goal of communication is not to impress people. The goal is to be understood. And understanding happens through clarity. Here is a simple rule that powerful communicators follow. If you can say something in fewer words, do it. The fewer the words, the sharper the message. This principle is used everywhere, in leadership, in negotiation, in storytelling, in writing. A short sentence often carries more power than a long explanation. For example, "I disagree." 3 words, clear, strong, respectful. Compare that with a long defensive explanation filled with justifications. The short sentence commands more respect because it shows certainty, and certainty attracts attention. But precision does not only apply to what you say, it also applies to when you stop speaking. Many people ruin powerful statements by continuing after the point has already been made. They repeat themselves. They add unnecessary details. They keep explaining. But great communicators know when to stop. They deliver the message. Then they allow silence to reinforce it. Think of words like arrows. If you fire 1 arrow accurately, the target is hit. But if you fire 10 arrows randomly, the impact weakens. Precision is about choosing the 1 arrow that matters and letting it land. But speaking with precision requires something deeper. It requires knowing what truly matters in a conversation. Most people speak to fill space. Powerful communicators speak to move the conversation forward. Every sentence they say serves a purpose: to clarify, to guide, to resolve, to inspire. If a sentence does not serve one of these purposes, it is unnecessary. This awareness transforms communication. You stop speaking automatically. You start speaking deliberately. And when you speak deliberately, your words begin to carry weight. But there is another important skill that makes precise speech even more powerful. Tone. 2 people can say the same sentence, but their tone changes the entire meaning. Imagine someone saying, "That's interesting." In one tone, it means curiosity. In another tone, it means sarcasm. Tone reveals emotion, and people respond more to emotion than words. This is why calm tone creates influence. When someone speaks calmly, others feel safe listening. When someone speaks aggressively, Others become defensive. Influence requires cooperation, and cooperation begins with emotional safety. Your tone can create that safety instantly. Slow speech, calm delivery, clear language. These signals communicate confidence and control. And control is contagious. When you remain calm, the room becomes calmer. When the room becomes calmer, people listen better. And when people listen better, your words carry greater impact. This is the hidden power of speaking less. Fewer words create space. Space creates attention. Attention gives your words meaning. But there is still another dimension to powerful communication, one that transforms ordinary conversations into meaningful connections. The ability to ask the right questions, because questions do something statements cannot. Statements push ideas forward. Questions invite people in. Questions open minds. Questions reveal hidden thoughts. And in many cases, the person who asks the best questions becomes the most influential voice in the room. That is where we go next, because mastering the art of asking questions may be the most underestimated communication skill in the world. And once you learn it, people will begin sharing things with you they rarely tell anyone else. Chapter 5, Ask Less. Discover More. Most people believe influence comes from having the right answers. The smartest answer, the fastest response, the perfect argument. But the most powerful communicators in the world rarely dominate conversations with answers. They dominate conversations with questions. Because questions unlock something answers cannot. They unlock people. Think about the difference between these two approaches. Someone says, "I'm thinking about changing careers." Response 1, "You should stay where you are. The job market is unstable." Response 2, "What's making you consider the change?" The first response shuts the conversation down. The second response opens a door, and doors lead to understanding. Understanding leads to trust. Trust leads to influence. The truth is simple, but often overlooked. People trust those who help them express themselves, not those who constantly express themselves. When you ask thoughtful questions, something interesting happens. The focus of the conversation shifts away from you and toward the other person, and that shift does something powerful. It makes people feel seen. It makes people feel respected, and people remember that feeling. Think about the last time someone asked you a question that made you pause and think. Not a routine question, but a genuine one. Something like, "What excites you most about that idea?" Or, "What part of this situation worries you the most?" Questions like these create space for honesty. They invite deeper thoughts to surface. They signal curiosity, and curiosity is magnetic. Because most people rarely experience it. Many conversations are filled with interruptions, advice given too quickly, opinions forced too strongly, but curiosity changes the entire energy. Curiosity says, "I want to understand you." And when someone feels understood, their guard lowers. Walls come down. Real communication begins. This is why great negotiators ask more questions than they make statements. They understand that information is power. The more you learn about someone's motivations, fears, and priorities, the easier it becomes to guide the conversation toward solutions. But there is an art to asking powerful questions. Not all questions are equal. Some questions close conversations, others open them. Closed questions are questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no. Did you finish the project? Do you like the idea? These questions are efficient, but they rarely create meaningful discussion. Open questions invite exploration. What part of the project was most challenging? What do you like about the idea? Now the other person must explain. They must think. They must reveal more. And every answer gives you insight. But there is an even more powerful type of question: reflective questions. These questions mirror the conversation back to the speaker. For example, someone says, "I'm overwhelmed with work right now." Instead of responding with advice immediately, you might ask, "What part of it feels the most overwhelming?" Or, "What would make it feel more manageable?" These questions do something subtle but powerful. They encourage the other person to explore their own thoughts. Often, they arrive at their own solutions. And when people arrive at solutions themselves, they trust those solutions more. This is the hidden psychology of influence. When people feel forced, they resist. When people feel guided, they cooperate. Questions guide, statements push. But asking questions also requires something important: genuine interest. If your questions feel mechanical or manipulative, people sense it immediately. Humans are incredibly sensitive to authenticity. You cannot fake curiosity. You must truly want to understand. And that mindset transforms conversations. Instead of trying to impress people, you begin trying to understand them. Instead of proving yourself, you become interested in their world. And ironically, that curiosity often makes you more impressive, because people are drawn to those who listen deeply. Now here's a small challenge you can practice today. In your next conversation, try this rule. Ask 2 questions before offering one opinion. 2 questions, then 1 response. This simple habit will completely change the dynamic of your conversations. You will learn more, you will speak less, and your words will carry more weight when you finally share them. Because by that point, you understand the situation better. You understand the person better, and your response becomes more relevant. But questions do more than gather information. They shape thinking. A well-placed question can change how someone sees a problem. Imagine someone saying, "This situation is impossible." A direct argument might trigger resistance, but a question changes the direction. What part of it feels impossible? Or, what would need to change for it to feel possible? Suddenly, the mind begins exploring new angles, new solutions, new possibilities, all triggered by a question. This is why many great leaders rely heavily on questions rather than commands. Questions invite collaboration. Commands create resistance. And collaboration builds stronger relationships. But questions have another hidden benefit. They reduce the pressure on you. When you believe you must always have the perfect answer, conversations become stressful. You feel the need to perform, to impress, to prove yourself. But when you ask questions, the conversation becomes a shared exploration. You are no longer carrying the entire weight of the interaction. You are guiding it, and guiding is easier than controlling. But there is another layer to this skill. Once you ask powerful questions, you must also master the ability to listen to the answers fully. Because many people ask questions and then interrupt the response, they are not truly listening. They are simply waiting for their turn to speak. True listening is different. True listening requires presence, focus, patience. And the next chapter will explore this deeper skill. Because listening is not passive. Listening is an active force in communication. And once you learn how to listen with intention, people will begin opening up to you in ways they rarely do with anyone else. Chapter 6. The Power of Listening. Most people believe listening is passive. They imagine it as silence, waiting, doing nothing. But true listening is not passive. True listening is one of the most active forces in communication. Because listening does something most people rarely experience. It gives someone your full attention. And attention is one of the most powerful emotional currencies in the world. Think about the last time you felt completely heard, not interrupted, not judged, not rushed, just heard. You probably felt calm, respected, understood. That emotional response is not accidental. It is psychological. When people feel heard, their brain releases signals of safety and trust. Their defenses lower. Their openness increases. And once openness appears, communication becomes deeper. This is why the best communicators are not the best speakers. They are the best listeners, because listening gives them access to something invaluable, truth. Not the surface-level words people use in casual conversation, but the deeper thoughts hiding beneath those words, the real motivations, the real concerns, the real emotions. But uncovering those deeper layers requires a different type of listening. Most people practice what psychologists call waiting listening. They appear quiet, but inside their mind, they are preparing their next sentence. They are not absorbing information. They are preparing a response. This type of listening is shallow. It captures words, but misses meaning. Powerful communicators practice something different. Active listening. Active listening means your mind is fully focused on the other person. You are not rehearsing replies. You are studying what is being said. And just as importantly, what is not being said. Because often the most important messages are hidden between sentences. A hesitation in someone's voice, a sudden change in tone, a brief pause before answering. These signals reveal emotional truth. But they only become visible when your attention is completely present. Presence is rare. In modern conversations, people are distracted constantly. Phones buzz, notifications appear, eyes drift toward screens. Even during conversations, attention is divided, but when someone gives you undivided attention, it feels powerful, it feels respectful, and people instinctively value those who offer it. This is why strong listeners often become trusted advisors. Friends open up to them, colleagues confide in them, leaders rely on them. Not because they speak the most, but because they understand the most. Understanding builds influence. But active listening includes another skill that many people overlook. Reflection. Reflection means briefly summarizing or acknowledging what the other person said. For example, someone says, "I've been under a lot of pressure at work lately." Instead of immediately offering advice, you might respond with, "It sounds like work has been really overwhelming." This small reflection shows that you truly heard them. And when people feel understood, they continue sharing. They expand their thoughts. They reveal deeper layers of the situation. Reflection also prevents misunderstanding because it allows the speaker to confirm or clarify their meaning. But reflection must be natural. It should not sound robotic or rehearsed. It should feel conversational, empathetic, human. Another powerful listening technique is mirroring. Mirroring means repeating one or two key words the speaker used. If someone says, "I'm worried about how this decision might affect the team," you might respond with, "Worried about the team?" This small repetition encourages the speaker to continue explaining. It invites them to elaborate, and often they reveal more important information. This technique is widely used by skilled negotiators and interviewers because it keeps the conversation flowing without forcing direction. But listening deeply requires patience, and patience can be difficult when you believe you already know the answer. When someone begins explaining a familiar topic, the mind often jumps ahead. You assume you know what they will say, and the moment you assume, you stop listening. But assumptions are dangerous in communication because people rarely say exactly what you expect. There are always nuances, context, emotions, details you cannot predict. True listening means letting go of assumptions. It means staying curious until the other person has finished expressing themselves. And when you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. People begin trusting you with more important conversations. They seek your perspective. They respect your presence because they know you will listen before speaking. But listening has another hidden advantage. It gives you time. Time to understand, time to think, time to choose the most effective response. While others rush to speak, you gather information. While others argue, you observe. And observation creates clarity. But listening alone does not create influence. Listening must eventually lead to response. And the way you respond determines the direction of the conversation. In the next chapter, we will explore one of the most powerful response techniques ever discovered, a method that allows you to guide conversations without dominating them, a technique that transforms conflict into cooperation. And once you understand it, you will realize that influence is not about controlling conversations. It is about shaping them. If you have watched the video up to this point, please write in the comments which country you are from. It is very interesting to see which corners of the world our viewers come from. Chapter 7. Guide, don't dominate. Many people believe that strong communication means taking control of a conversation, speaking confidently, winning arguments, proving points. But the most influential communicators rarely try to dominate conversations. Instead, they guide them. Guiding is different from controlling. Control forces people. Guidance invites them. And people respond very differently to those two approaches. When someone feels forced, their mind becomes defensive. Their ego activates. Their brain begins searching for ways to resist. But when someone feels guided, their mind stays open. They feel respected. They remain willing to explore new ideas. This is why powerful communicators rarely begin with statements like, "You're wrong," or "That's not the right approach." Those phrases trigger resistance immediately. Instead, skilled communicators use questions and subtle framing to redirect the conversation. For example, imagine someone presenting an idea that you believe will fail. A direct response might be, "That won't work." But a guiding response might sound like, "That's interesting. What do you think the biggest challenge with that approach might be?" Notice the difference. One shuts the idea down. The other invites the speaker to examine it more closely. Often, they discover the problem themselves. And when people reach conclusions on their own, they accept them more easily. This principle appears everywhere in effective leadership. Great leaders rarely command every step. Instead, they guide thinking. They ask questions. They create environments where people discover solutions together. This approach creates cooperation instead of conflict. But guiding conversations requires emotional control because conversations often become heated, especially when opinions collide. Imagine someone strongly criticizing your idea in front of others. Your instinct may be to defend yourself quickly, to respond immediately, to prove your position. But that reaction usually escalates tension. Instead, a guiding communicator pauses. They acknowledge the concern. They invite further explanation, something like, "That's a fair concern. Can you explain what part worries you most?" Now the conversation shifts. Instead of argument, you have dialogue. Instead of two people fighting for control, you have exploration. And exploration is where influence lives. Because influence is not about overpowering someone's perspective. It is about helping them reconsider it. But guiding conversations also requires something deeper. You must remain calm when others become emotional. Emotional energy spreads quickly in conversations. If one person becomes defensive and the other reacts the same way, tension multiplies. But if one person stays calm, the emotional intensity often decreases. Calmness is stabilizing. It signals control, and control creates authority. This is why the quiet person in a heated discussion often becomes the most respected voice. They are not feeding the conflict. They are guiding it toward resolution. But there is another technique powerful communicators use to guide conversations. Framing. Framing means presenting ideas in ways that shift how people see a situation. For example, instead of saying, "This plan will cost more money," a different frame might be, "This plan requires a higher investment, but it could save us significant time in the long run." The facts remain the same, but the perspective changes, and perspective shapes decisions. This is why advertisers, negotiators, and leaders all rely on framing. The words you choose influence how people interpret reality. But framing must remain honest. Manipulation destroys trust. Influence built on deception eventually collapses. True influence is built on clarity and respect. Guidance should help people see new possibilities, not trick them. Now imagine combining everything we've explored so far. Observation, pausing, precise speech, powerful questions, active listening, guidance. Suddenly, communication becomes a completely different experience. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are navigating conversations intentionally. And when conversations become intentional, your presence begins to feel different to others. People feel calmer around you, more open, more willing to share their ideas. And that openness creates opportunities for deeper connection. Because communication is not just about exchanging information. It is about building relationships. Relationships built through respect, through patience, through understanding. But there is still another element that makes communication truly powerful. A quality that transforms ordinary speakers into unforgettable ones. Presence. Presence is the energy someone brings into a conversation. It is the calm confidence people can feel even before you speak. And presence can amplify everything you say. Because sometimes influence begins long before the first word leaves your mouth. In the next chapter, we will explore how presence shapes communication, how your posture, tone, and attention can command respect without saying anything at all. And once you understand this, you will realize that powerful communication begins not with speaking, but with how you show up. Chapter 8. The Quiet Authority of Presence. Before a single word is spoken, communication has already begun. People feel your presence the moment you enter a room. Your posture, your energy, your attention, your calmness. All of these signals speak before you do, and often they speak louder than words ever could. Think about someone you immediately respect when they walk into a room, not because they are loud, not because they demand attention, but because something about them feels grounded. They move slowly. They observe before acting. They seem comfortable with silence. That is presence. Presence is quiet authority. It is the ability to remain calm and centered while the world rushes around you. And presence is one of the most powerful communication tools you can develop, because people instinctively trust those who appear calm and aware. Our brains constantly scan the environment for signals of safety and stability. When someone appears anxious, rushed, or chaotic, others unconsciously feel uneasy. But when someone appears composed, the brain relaxes. People feel safe listening to them, safe trusting them, safe following them. Presence creates that safety. But presence does not come from pretending to be confident. People can sense fake confidence immediately. True presence comes from self-awareness, awareness of your breath, awareness of your posture, awareness of the energy you bring into a conversation. Let's explore something simple. The way you sit or stand during a conversation changes how your words are received. If your shoulders are tight, your body tense, your movements restless, others feel that tension. But when your posture is relaxed yet upright, your breathing slow, your movements controlled, others feel that calmness, and calmness is contagious. Presence is also closely connected to eye contact. Eye contact signals attention. It signals honesty. It signals confidence. But powerful communicators use eye contact naturally, not aggressively. They look at the person speaking. They break eye contact briefly when thinking. They return it when responding. This rhythm feels human and comfortable. But many people avoid eye contact because they feel nervous. They look down. They glance at their phone. They stare at the table. And unintentionally, they send signals of insecurity. Strong presence requires comfort with attention, not constant staring, but calm awareness. Now let's talk about another element of presence, movement. Watch someone who feels uncomfortable in conversation. They fidget. They shift constantly. They adjust their clothes. They tap their fingers. These movements reveal inner anxiety. Now watch someone with strong presence. Their movements are slower, more intentional. They gesture naturally when speaking, but they do not move unnecessarily. Stillness communicates control, and control attracts respect. Think of a mountain, strong, unshaken, calm even in harsh weather. Presence feels like that, stable, grounded, reliable. But presence also influences how your voice sounds. When someone is nervous, their voice becomes faster, higher, less steady. But when someone is calm, their voice becomes deeper, slower, clearer. People listen differently to a calm voice. It feels trustworthy. It feels authoritative. You can practice this by slowing your speech slightly, not dramatically, just enough to allow each sentence to breathe. Fast speech signals nervous energy. Slow speech signals confidence. Another powerful element of presence is attention. True presence means being fully focused on the moment, not thinking about the next meeting, not worrying about what someone thinks of you, not checking notifications, just being present. When someone feels your full attention, they recognize it instantly, and it creates connection, because attention is respect. It says, "You matter enough for me to focus on you completely." Few people offer that kind of attention today, which is why those who do stand out immediately. But presence also requires comfort with silence. Many people fear quiet moments in conversation. They rush to fill them. They feel awkward if no one speaks. But people with strong presence treat silence differently. They allow it. They sit comfortably inside it. Because silence does not threaten them, and that comfort signals confidence. When you combine calm posture, steady eye contact, intentional movement, clear tone, and full attention, something powerful happens. Your presence becomes noticeable, even before you speak. People begin treating you differently. They listen more closely. They respect your perspective, not because you demanded authority, but because your presence communicates stability, and stability inspires trust. But presence alone is not enough. Eventually, conversations become challenging. Disagreements appear, emotions rise, and this is where the true test of communication begins. Because anyone can speak calmly when things are easy, but powerful communicators remain composed when conversations become difficult. In the next chapter, we will explore one of the most valuable skills you can develop: emotional control in conversation. Because when emotions rise, most people lose their influence, but those who remain calm gain it. And mastering that emotional balance may be the difference between ordinary communication and truly powerful influence. Chapter 9. Master your emotions. Before your words, there is a moment in almost every difficult conversation when emotions rise. A criticism appears. Someone misunderstands your intention. An accusation is made. A disagreement becomes personal. And suddenly the conversation changes. The calm exchange of ideas disappears. Emotion takes control. Voices become sharper. Sentences become faster, and influence begins to collapse. Because when emotions control the conversation, logic disappears. Most people lose their communication power in this moment. They react, they defend, they interrupt, they try to win. But powerful communicators understand something deeper. The moment emotions rise is the moment influence matters most. Anyone can communicate well when everything is easy, but true influence appears when tension enters the room. Imagine two people in a disagreement. One becomes defensive. Their voice tightens. Their words become rushed. They interrupt. The situation escalates quickly. Now imagine a different response. The other person pauses. They breathe. They speak calmly. Even if they disagree, their tone remains steady. Suddenly, the energy of the conversation changes because emotional control is contagious. When one person stays calm, the emotional intensity of the room begins to settle. But emotional control does not mean suppressing feelings. It means managing them, recognizing them, choosing how to respond instead of reacting automatically. This begins with awareness. When someone challenges you, your brain activates a survival response. Psychologists call this the fight or flight reaction. Your body prepares to defend itself. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your thoughts become narrow. The brain shifts from reasoning to survival mode. This reaction made sense thousands of years ago when threats were physical. But in modern conversations, this response often causes unnecessary conflict. Because disagreement is not danger. Criticism is not a physical threat, yet the body reacts as if it were. Powerful communicators train themselves to notice this reaction early. They feel the tension rising, and instead of reacting immediately, they slow down. They take one deep breath. They pause. That pause interrupts the emotional spiral. It gives your thinking brain time to return. Once your mind is calm again, your response becomes strategic instead of defensive. Here is a simple technique that can transform difficult conversations. Whenever you feel emotional tension rising, silently ask yourself one question. What outcome do I actually want from this conversation? Do you want understanding? Do you want resolution? Do you want cooperation? If the answer is yes, reacting emotionally will not help you reach that outcome, but calm communication might. Now let's explore another powerful principle. Separate the person from the problem. Many arguments escalate because people feel personally attacked. Instead of discussing the issue, they begin defending themselves. But skilled communicators redirect the focus. They acknowledge the emotion without attacking the individual. For example, instead of saying, "You're wrong about this," you might say, "I see the situation differently. The difference may seem small, but psychologically it matters." One statement feels confrontational. The other invites discussion. Another powerful phrase during tense conversations is, "I want to understand your perspective." This sentence instantly lowers emotional defenses. It signals respect, and respect opens dialogue. But emotional control also requires humility. Sometimes you will be wrong. Sometimes someone else's idea will be better. And powerful communicators are not afraid to admit that. In fact, acknowledging someone else's valid point often strengthens your credibility. You might say, "That's a good point. I hadn't considered that angle." This response shows confidence rather than weakness. Because confident people are not threatened by new ideas. They welcome them. But emotional control does something else important. It protects your reputation. In moments of anger, people often say things they regret. Words spoken in frustration can damage relationships that took years to build. But those who pause and choose their responses carefully rarely experience that regret. Their words remain measured. Their tone remains respectful. And people remember that composure. In fact, calmness during conflict often earns deeper respect than winning an argument. Because emotional maturity signals strength. Now imagine someone who remains calm in every difficult conversation. Someone who listens before reacting. Someone who asks questions instead of attacking. Someone who stays composed when others lose control. That person becomes incredibly influential. People trust them. People respect them. People seek their perspective, not because they dominate conversations, but because they elevate them. This is the real power of emotional control. It transforms conflict into clarity. But emotional mastery leads to another powerful communication skill. Once you can remain calm during difficult conversations, you gain the ability to handle disagreement with elegance. Because disagreement is inevitable in relationships, in business, in leadership. But disagreement does not have to create division. Handled wisely, disagreement can strengthen understanding. And the next chapter will show you exactly how to do that. Because learning to disagree without destroying connection is one of the most valuable communication skills you can ever develop. Chapter 10. Disagree without creating enemies. Disagreement is inevitable. Two people with different experiences, different priorities, different beliefs will eventually see things differently. And when those differences appear, something interesting happens. Many conversations stop being about the issue and start becoming about ego. One person wants to be right. The other person refuses to be wrong. Voices become sharper. Patience disappears. And suddenly, A simple disagreement becomes a personal conflict. But powerful communicators handle disagreement differently. They understand a crucial truth. You can challenge an idea without attacking the person who shared it. And that distinction changes everything. Most arguments escalate because people feel personally threatened. Their identity becomes attached to their opinion. So when someone challenges the opinion, it feels like a personal attack. But skilled communicators separate ideas from identity. They challenge the idea while respecting the person. For example, imagine someone says, "This strategy is the only way this project will work." A defensive response might be, "That's completely wrong." Instant tension, instant resistance. Instead, a more skillful response might be, "That's one interesting approach. I'm curious how you see it handling the risks we discussed earlier." Notice the difference. The second response does not reject the idea directly. It invites exploration. And exploration is much easier to accept than confrontation. But disagreement can also become productive when you acknowledge the other person's perspective first. A simple phrase can change the entire tone of the conversation. "I understand why you see it that way." This sentence does something powerful. It signals respect. It shows you are listening. And when people feel respected, they become more willing to hear your perspective. You are not surrendering your opinion. You are creating space for dialogue. Another powerful phrase is, "That's a valid concern." Even if you disagree with the final conclusion, acknowledging the concern itself builds trust because people want to know they have been heard. Once someone feels understood, they become more open to hearing new ideas. Now let's talk about a mistake many people make during disagreements. They focus on winning the argument. Winning may feel satisfying in the moment, but it often damages the relationship. And in most areas of life, relationships matter far more than being right. Influential communicators prioritize long-term respect over short-term victory. They ask themselves, "Is proving my point more important than preserving this relationship?" Often the answer is no, because influence grows through trust, and trust is fragile. Once broken, it takes time to rebuild. Now imagine someone who always responds calmly during disagreements, someone who listens fully before responding, someone who acknowledges valid points from others, someone who challenges ideas without humiliating people. That person becomes incredibly respected because they create safe conversations, and safe conversations encourage honest thinking. But there is another strategy that can transform disagreements completely. Find common ground first. Even when two people disagree strongly, there is usually something they both care about. The success of the project, the well-being of the team, the outcome of a decision. Start there. For example, "I think we both want this project to succeed. We just see different paths to get there." This simple statement reminds everyone that they are working towards the same goal. And once the shared goal is clear, disagreement becomes collaboration. Instead of fighting each other, you begin solving the problem together. But sometimes disagreement becomes emotional. Someone may raise their voice, interrupt repeatedly, or speak aggressively. In these moments, the instinct is often to match their energy. But matching emotional intensity rarely leads to resolution. Instead, try lowering your tone. Speak slower. Remain calm. This contrast can shift the emotional energy of the entire conversation, because anger cannot easily sustain itself when the other person refuses to feed it. Calmness creates balance. Balance allows reason to return. But here is another important truth. Sometimes the wisest response is simply to step back. Not every disagreement must be resolved immediately. If emotions are too high, continuing the conversation may only cause damage. A powerful communicator recognizes this moment. They might say, "I think this is an important discussion, but maybe we should revisit it later when we've had time to think." This shows maturity. It protects the relationship, and it allows time for reflection. Now imagine applying all of these principles consistently. You observe before reacting. You pause before responding. You ask questions before making statements. You acknowledge perspectives before presenting your own. You remain calm when tension rises. You guide conversations instead of dominating them. People begin experiencing something different when they interact with you. They feel respected. They feel understood. They feel safe sharing ideas. And because of that, your words begin carrying more influence. Because influence is not built through force. It is built through respectful communication. But there is still another layer to powerful communication, one that goes beyond words entirely, because sometimes the most powerful messages are not spoken at all. They are communicated through body language, your posture, your facial expressions, your gestures. All of these signals speak constantly during conversations, and often they reveal more about you than your words do. In the next chapter, we will explore the psychology of body language, how small physical signals shape how others perceive you, and how mastering those signals can dramatically increase your influence, even when you say very little, because sometimes your body speaks louder than your voice. Chapter 11. When your body speaks before you do. Long before your words reach someone's ears, your body has already delivered a message. Your posture, your expression, your eye movement, your breathing. These signals speak constantly, and often they speak louder than your voice. Psychologists estimate that a large portion of human communication happens without words, not because words are unimportant, but because the human brain evolved to read signals long before language existed. Thousands of years ago, survival depended on reading body language. Was the stranger approaching a threat? Was the tribe leader confident? Was someone hiding fear? These instincts still operate today, quietly guiding how people perceive you the moment you enter a room. Before you say a single sentence, people ask themselves subconscious questions. Does this person seem confident? Do they seem trustworthy? Do they seem calm under pressure? And the answers to those questions come almost entirely from body language. This is why someone can say the right words, but still fail to persuade. Because if their body signals insecurity, tension, or uncertainty, the brain of the listener receives a conflicting message. And when words and body language conflict, people believe the body. Imagine someone saying, "I'm completely confident in this plan," but their shoulders are hunched, their eyes avoid contact, their hands fidget nervously. The message does not land, not because the words were wrong, but because the body disagreed. Powerful communicators understand this. They align their body language with their message. Calm body, calm voice, clear words, everything working together. Let's begin with posture. Posture is the foundation of physical presence. When someone stands or sits upright with relaxed shoulders and steady breathing, they appear confident and composed, not rigid, not stiff, just grounded. But when someone collapses into their chair, slouches forward, or tightens their shoulders, they unintentionally signal discomfort. The mind of the listener interprets these signals instantly. Confidence attracts attention. Tension creates doubt. So before you worry about your next sentence, check your posture. Straight spine, relaxed shoulders, stable presence. These small adjustments transform how people perceive you. Next comes eye contact. Eye contact is one of the most powerful tools in communication. It signals honesty, attention, respect, but it must feel natural. Too little eye contact makes you seem distracted or insecure. Too much can feel aggressive. The balance lies in rhythm. Look at the person while they speak. Look away briefly when thinking. Return your gaze when responding. This rhythm feels human, comfortable, authentic, and authenticity builds trust. Now, consider your hands. Hands reveal nervous energy quickly. When people feel anxious, they fidget, they tap, they adjust objects repeatedly. These movements signal internal tension, but intentional gestures can enhance communication. When you gesture naturally to emphasize an idea, your words become more vivid. Your message becomes easier to follow. The key is natural movement, not constant motion. Stillness communicates control, and controlled movement communicates clarity. Another powerful signal is your facial expression. Your face reflects emotion faster than words can hide it. If someone shares something important and your expression remains neutral or distracted, they feel ignored. But when your expression matches the emotional tone of the conversation, connection deepens. A slight nod while someone speaks, a thoughtful expression when considering an idea, a genuine smile when appropriate. These signals show engagement, and engagement makes people feel valued, but perhaps the most overlooked element of body language is breathing. When someone becomes nervous, their breathing becomes shallow and fast. This affects their voice. Their tone becomes tighter. Their speech becomes rushed. But when breathing slows, everything changes. The voice becomes deeper. The pace becomes calmer. The body relaxes, and calm communication emerges. Before speaking in an important moment, a meeting, a negotiation, a difficult conversation, take one slow breath. Just one. That breath stabilizes your nervous system. It grounds your presence, and that grounding makes your words more powerful. Now imagine combining everything we've explored so far. You walk into a room calmly. Your posture is steady. Your attention is focused. You listen carefully. You speak only when necessary. Your words are precise. Your tone is calm. Your body language supports your message. People notice something different about you. They may not know exactly what it is, but they feel it. Your presence carries weight, and that weight gives your words influence. But there is another layer to communication that many people overlook. Even if your words are clear, your body language strong, your presence calm, none of it matters if people do not feel emotionally connected to you. Because influence does not live only in logic. Influence lives in emotion. And in the next chapter, we will explore one of the most powerful forces in communication, empathy, the ability to understand and respond to the emotions behind someone's words. Because once people feel understood, they become far more open to hearing what you have to say. And mastering empathy transforms communication from simple conversation into genuine connection. Chapter 12, The Language of Empathy. Most people believe influence comes from intelligence, from having the smartest ideas, the strongest arguments, the most impressive vocabulary. But the greatest communicators in the world rely on something far more powerful: empathy. Empathy is the ability to step into another person's emotional world, to understand not just what they say, but what they feel. And feelings drive decisions far more than logic ever will. Think about the last time you were truly frustrated about something. Maybe a colleague misunderstood your work. Maybe a friend dismissed something important to you. Maybe someone gave advice before understanding your situation. In those moments, what did you want most? Not solutions, not arguments. You wanted someone to understand how you felt. This is why empathy is one of the strongest forces in communication. Because when people feel understood, something inside them relaxes. Their guard lowers. Their mind opens. And once someone feels emotionally understood, they become far more receptive to ideas, perspectives, and solutions. But empathy requires something many people struggle with. It requires slowing down your own perspective. When someone speaks, your mind immediately begins forming opinions. You compare their words to your experiences. You judge whether you agree or disagree. You prepare your response. But empathy pauses that internal conversation. Instead of asking, "What do I think about this?" you ask, "What might this feel like for them?" That small shift transforms communication because instead of reacting to the surface of the conversation, you begin responding to the emotional reality underneath it. For example, imagine someone saying, "I'm really struggling with this project." A logical response might be, just break it into smaller steps. Practical advice, but emotionally incomplete. An empathetic response might sound like, "That sounds really stressful. What part of it is weighing on you the most?" This is the quiet power of influence. Influence does not require authority. Influence grows through respect. Respect grows through empathy. And empathy grows through listening. But there is one final truth about powerful communication, a truth that brings everything together. Influence does not come from speaking less alone. It comes from speaking with awareness. Awareness of the moment. Awareness of the people. Awareness of your words. When you combine awareness with restraint, your communication becomes intentional. And intentional communication creates meaningful impact. Now imagine your life a year from now. You listen more carefully. You pause before responding. You speak with clarity instead of impulse. You guide conversations calmly. You respect emotions. You adapt to different personalities. You leave people feeling better than before. Your words become fewer but stronger. Your presence becomes quieter but more respected. People listen differently when you speak because they know your words carry meaning. And that is the real transformation. Not louder communication, but wiser communication. Not more talking, but deeper influence. And as you continue practicing these principles, something remarkable begins to happen. You realize communication is not just a skill. It becomes a way of living, a way of connecting, a way of shaping the world around you, one thoughtful conversation at a time. If this audiobook sparked a new perspective for you, take a moment and reflect on one question. What conversation in your life could change if you chose to listen more and speak with intention? And if a particular idea from this journey stayed with you, share it in the comments. Your insight might become the sentence someone else needed to hear today. And if you want to continue exploring the psychology of calm influence, emotional intelligence, and powerful presence. Stay connected, because the next journey might explore something equally transformative: the psychology of calm power, how quiet minds lead loud worlds. Until then, remember the simple truth that shaped this entire audiobook. Speak less, observe more, understand deeply, and when you finally speak, make your words matter.